What's going on YouTube? Warstorm here, coming at you guys with another video. Today I'm going to be doing kind of more of an update video, but also kind of a recapping the Houston Regional and talking a little bit about the format. So this isn't really scripted at all. This will be a bunch of kind of like random thoughts and everything. But I do think with the regional over the weekend, it would be high time to discuss. And now that I've had more of a chance to experience the format, to talk about it. So the Houston Regional, obviously over the weekend, if you guys didn't see, like it was a pretty big scale experience. I don't think it definitely felt like a YCS level event because I believe we had almost 600 people turn out. We had 10 rounds. There's some issues that I'm going to get to in a moment, but in terms of the venue was great. There were a lot of things such as having the table numbers on hand dangling from the ceiling, which made it a lot easier to find where your table was. You know, that obviously having it live stream and having John Moore there is always cool. But definitely more spots as far as what I played. Obviously, if you didn't see the deck profile from Friday, I mentioned it in my community post. I did play Branded Invoked Eldritch. I actually did not do too bad. I didn't take my fourth loss until round 9. But it was so late by that point. I missed like a really key play. I was playing against Heroes and I Nibiru'd him, so he wasn't able to like really make a good board. All he had was because he tried to go into Cross Crusader, but he already used the effect that turn, so he just had to set a mass change and pass. All I really had to do once he made the Dark Claw in the battle phase was just run over the Dark Claw, then activate Mirror Jade, remove the token, and swing with the Nibiru, and I would have had game. It was just really late by that point. It was like 10 p.m. I'd been playing, so we'd been playing since 12, so obviously, you know, there's always going to be a bit of fatigue by that point. I think even if I would have won, I just don't know if I would have really been able to. I was getting tired by that point. I don't know if I would have been able to win my final round. But overall, I was really happy with the deck. I mean, it obviously wasn't like a top tier meta choice. Obviously, most of my matchups weren't too bad. Kastira can be a little rough, but I did win out of 3 of those. I did beat the Sprite player I played against. Overall, I think I just had a pretty good event. But obviously, you know, Kastira is not exactly the most fun deck to play against. I had been hoping to see more trap tricks, which I actually didn't see all day. Mostly because if Magical Meltdown is up, it really turns off a lot of things that deck does. But I didn't see it all day. As far as you know, MVPs, the side deck MVP was definitely this card, Artifact Lancia. It was absolutely fantastic all day. I had it against the Kastira player, and it really did. It covers a lot of things that are running around in the format. It's not, you know, and also there's just a lot of little benefit. It can be really good against Kastira. It prevents them from locking you or knocking anything, really banishing any of your stuff. And it's also an MVP because evenly matched is everywhere. I think I got evenly matched 3 times, twice in one game over the tournament. So definitely was the MVP of the side deck. But as far as what I think of the format, while Kastira is the best deck, I think because everyone is playing things to counter them, like I was playing Nibiru in the main deck, a lot of people are playing counters to Kastira, so it has a harder time playing in with those counters because there's no Kastira board that they can make that plays around every single counter your opponent could possibly have. So and it's not quite last year where we had, well, Branded Despia was the best deck, but the ceiling of that deck was to the point where, because I think the ceiling of Branded Despia now, as well as Kastira, is a lot higher compared to what it was last year, where that and Florundaries were kind of the best decks, but the ceiling of those decks was not super below everything else, so it was a really open and hard to play for format. I think it's been a pretty good format though, but there are definitely some things I would like to see changed before the WCQ. One card I definitely wanted to mention is this one, which is Dimensional Barrier. This card is something I think Konami is eventually going to have to take a look at. I like Dimensional Barrier, don't get me wrong, but I think it's one of those cards that there's very little counterplay to the card outside of hoping you have other resources to prevent your opponent, particularly if you're looking at the Medic top tier decks right now. If you're playing either Kashtira or Branded Despia and your opponent flips Barrier, outside of cross-out designating a Barrier from your deck, you have very little counterplay to that card, especially with things like Red Reboot Band. There's just not a lot of counterplay to Barrier currently in the format, and it could definitely be, with some of the interactions with Labyrinth, it's also really, really strong. I can understand why if Konami won't touch it, but it's definitely a card I think they may want to take a look at. If I'm playing a deck that primarily fusion summons, and I don't care about I flip a card that turns off my fusions for the turn, but I don't care, I think that's a little bit of a problem. But as far as, the more bigger problems in the room in Kashtira, I definitely think that the mass zone lock play needs to be taken a look at before Nationals. And if you look at what they did with Tier Elements, where they hit some of the cards around it before finally hitting the deck itself, I think it's possible they take that approach. Maybe getting Mind Hacker is the card that enables a lot of the just disgusting, like, several lock plays. I've seen some people talk about limiting Era as well, and that's a distinct possibility, but I do think that Mind Hacker definitely is what enables a lot of these zone locks, because at best, I don't think, now, Pendulum being the exception, I think that, like, at most, Era is going to lock one, maybe two zones, and I think most decks can kind of function with that. But when you're playing against something like that, needs spells and traps, and your deck can lock out every spell and trap zone, limits what you can play against the deck. So Mind Hacker is definitely a card I would personally take a look at. If you're looking at the archetype itself, though, I think the obvious candidate, is Fenrir, and of course because it's played as a staple in other decks. Maybe also taking a look at the field spell, Unicorn, but I'm not sure if they're going to hit the deck super duper hard before the WCQ, particularly if they want to profit off of reprints and the Megatons. It just depends whether they decide whether we're going to get the Kashtira cards in the Megatons or not. It varies from year to year whether we get the January set in the Megatons later in the year, but I think the way things are headed, we most likely will. So I think Mind Hacker's definitely a good candidate. As far as moving down the list, Branded Despia I think is pretty safe with more support coming in the next set. It matters how long does Konami want to let the deck kind of hang around. You see this with some of the structure decks, the powerful ones such as Dinos. You can look at Dinosaurs. You can look at Salamangreats, where they don't mind. They do end up hitting the deck because it keeps coming back around. So I think that there's a good chance Branded gets hit in some way. I do think even if Branded Fusion did go to 1, because that's obviously the most powerful card in the archetype, it wouldn't hinder the deck that much. But I wouldn't be shocked if it gets like a hit on the list. As far as, everything else in the format, I don't think there's anything like really problematic. I think it's a fairly fun format. It's just there's a certain Kashtira deck that probably needs some hits. As far as coming towards the end of the video, updates for the rest of the from the channel in the future. I do have a kind of longer projects coming out later this week. It's going to be a video on Link summoning, and it's kind of an update on a video I did in the past asking if Link summoning was a mistake. Kind of like looking at the ban list and saying, okay, like how many cards actually ended up on the ban list specifically because of interactions with Link monsters. That's a project coming later this week as well. I have some live streams planned. I'm going to be back on Master Duel probably on Thursday, and I'm assuming sometime later over the weekend I'll be back on Hogwarts Legacy as well. So stay tuned for that. So anyway, guys, that about comes to the end of the video day. Let me, you guys think if you've been playing in the format, like what cards do you think need to be hit? Do you think Dimensional Barrier is possibly a problem? Do you think that Kashtira needs more hits than just Mind Hacker? Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, I thank you guys for watching. Swarstorm, signing out.